episode 113, I'm delighted to be joined by strength and conditioning coach Graham Byrne. Graham has worked with top-level clubs and athletes across Ireland, including Dundalk, Wexford, Louth, Dublin and Cuala, and in his day job is the fitness manager at Sport Ireland. During this episode, we discuss what it's like working with teams, culture, being a professional athlete in an amateur setup, staying fresh as a coach, and so much more. I hope you enjoy. Hi Graham, thanks a million for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me on and listen to me for the next few minutes, hopefully.
Good stuff. Would you mind giving a quick intro to listeners who might not know who you are?
My name is Graham Byrne, and my current role is fitness manager at Sport Ireland campus, and I'm also currently working as strength and conditioning coach for the Dublin U20 Hurling team.
Starting off coaching, you have obviously played sport. You have a playing career, but what made you kind of look at getting involved in the industry?
I suppose just really natural transition for me from my childhood. I suppose playing soccer and GAA and being involved heavily in. For me, it was St Vincent's GAA club when I was growing up. I'm from Marino, and that was my club when I was growing up. And obviously playing soccer, I played soccer then at a young age for, I suppose, all the clubs in the area: St Kevin's, Stella Maris, and Shelburne, and every kind of club in the area growing up. And yeah, I just kind of love being involved in elite sport. I love being around dressing rooms. I love the sense of occasion that you had every time you went out to play a match, whether it was for a school or for your GAA team or your soccer team. And I just loved sport and every kind of bit of sport. And then when I came to the realization, probably like most coaches or people who work in sport now, probably came to the realization at a particular age that you're not good enough to make a professional career playing, which was me. When I got to about 15, I realized, hey, a lot of my buddies are going on trial here. How come no one's ringing my house phone? And I'm not getting these trials across the water like everybody else is. And you kind of come to that realization that, whoops, I probably need to focus on skill now. I probably need to let that dream go, playing for Man United, and realize that a career has to. I have to put my head down and kind of think about what I want to do after school. And look, I think when you're at that age and that realization happens, for me it was difficult to probably realize a little bit too late to then go and tackle 500 points in the leaving cert, but I realized that, and the only thing really I wanted to study in college then was like PE teaching or sports science or some form of exercise, really, because it was the only thing I knew I was really passionate about at the time.
Okay, very good. You mentioned St Vincent's. I know we had a chat yesterday, but Dermot Connolly, was he as skilled and as naturally gifted growing up, or was that just something he worked on?
Yeah, look, I think Dermot, obviously, everyone's seen how good he is. We knew how good he was playing, kicking balls at street corners at 13, 14. Everyone's seen it now come to fruition. Like, just a guy who's just extremely talented. Whether it was the small ball or the big ball or the soccer ball, it didn't matter. A smashing athlete, an all-rounder, a guy who just, even though I remember getting dropped for an under-15 championship final in order for Dermot to play, who was a year younger than me at the time. I think he scored 1-8 that day, and it was justified decision by the manager. But Dermot was a smashing player. Just every sport just appeared to be easy for him, and I hope that, not to be said, that I hope that doesn't take away the fact that he also worked really hard, trained really well, he applied himself really well, whether it was for the school, or whether it was for Vincent's, or whether it was for Belvedere or Home Farm, wherever he might have played at the time underage playing soccer. I think he applied himself really well. And look, natural ability is incredible, but people forget how hard that man worked as a kid and how hard he worked to get to the levels that he did. So yeah, it was brilliant to watch him play, and it's brilliant to watch people who find sports easy, regardless of what it may be.
Yeah, it's a topic that I've kind of discussed with a couple of guests, but are great athletes born or made? It's kind of this argument, this thing you see is what side do you go on?
Look, there's the famous quote says, if you want to win an Olympic gold medal, choose your parents wisely. Yeah. So you gotta have good genetics. Okay. Like that's the beauty of a sport like American football or a sport like rugby. There's a position for every body shape and every attribute physically. So, like Keane Healy wasn't born to be a winger. Do you know what I mean? But he was certainly born to, and he had the attributes to become a fantastic front row. And you could take that into any sport. Tom Brady wouldn't have succeeded in any other position in American football. He wouldn't have the skill set physically and the makeup physically to succeed in any other position. So to say, yeah, it's important. Your genetics play a huge part. And then for me, it's about just how often you're playing the sport, how often you're playing, just moving. For me, I would say don't be specializing in a sport early. I think that's a huge help to you. I think people who decide to specialize in a particular sport, well, still in adolescence, still young adults even, I think that's ridiculous as far as I can see. I'm a big fan of the NFL, and you look at some of the top draft picks over the last 3 or 4 years, were also some of the top draft picks for the baseball teams. They could go on straight into professional baseball or professional football. A lot of them, you find out you're looking at a wide receiver and you find out that guy was also in the Olympics as a sprinter. So my thing would be, you don't have to be super specific on sports. Play as much sports as you can, play it as often as you can, run, play hopscotch, kick the can, bulldog, climb walls, climb trees, be active, be out, be mobile, and all those things I think really help on the physical side of developing athletes. And then, of course, challenges come mentally. And I think mentally is another huge aspect of success when it comes to being a top class athlete.
I knew this would happen. I've already gone way off up my question list. But I want to ask you about the 10,000 hours rule. You just mentioned it there about kids being outside. But like with athletes, is that something you believe in? Some people I've kind of spoken to would be like, yeah, 10,000 hours, that's the religion. Or it's like 10,000 hours, that doesn't matter. Like,
Look, I think accumulating hours is hugely important. Accumulating hours is massively important. What you don't want to, for me, it's about also not losing free play. I think a lot of things and we're almost going too structured, in my opinion. And again, like, you're asking me questions, and this is my opinion. All I am is I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I'm a sports scientist. I'm just a man with an opinion, okay? And it's I just think that there's a lot, as we try and improve, and we're trying our best to put in academies and to put in coaching sessions and to train our coaches up as much as possible. Like, that is invaluable. So I would never take away from that. But I do think that free play is invaluable as well. And I think having people make decisions, like, how about the 9-year-old plays football on the street with the 12-year-old? How about we don't just coach everyone tell them to do everything and dictate everything? How about we let them problem solve? So I think free play is a huge important part of that 10,000 hours rule. I think I just think that's something we can't overlook.
Going back to yourself, Graham, when you knew you wanted to enter the industry and you did, where did you start, and where did you start to build up the fantastic CV you currently have at the moment? Like, where did you look for a mentor? Did you I was reading a great blog with Cian Gormley. He's over in Rovers in the UK, and he kind of said how he would look at kind of job descriptions and see, where were the gaps he could fill. How did you fill those gaps and build the CV that you have at the moment?
For me, it was tough because as I said to you, I kind of focused on sports a bit too much and I wasn't really into the books in school. And for me, it was tough finishing school, and I think I struggled to get 300 points. And my only choice was to do a PLC course. And yeah, and that's where I talk about resilience. We talk about resilience, and it's just a huge theme of everything I talk about. With people that I coach. With whether it's my nieces and nephews in their own sporting career, whether they're 12, 13, 14, 15, it's about, like, you're not always going to get picked for the team. You're not always going to make the international team or the development squad. You're not always going to be successful. And it's just about being resilient and realizing, bouncing back from that. So for me, I had to go the long route. PLC course, got into the industry then, I suppose working in fitness. Then kind of had a sideways move at 21. I was kind of hoping to continue playing League of Ireland at 19, 20. And then all of a sudden, Pat Fenlon asked me to come into Bohemians as a strength condition coach. That was 2008. So literally when I was 21, my playing career quickly stopped in soccer, and GAA just ended. And all of a sudden I just came full-time as a strength condition coach at 21. And that's thanks to Pat Fenlon at the time, who was Bohemians manager. And I was working in the gym in DCU where they were training, and he asked me to come on board. And that then I knew, right, okay, we had success. We won the double. I think we won 7 trophies in 3 years. Really successful time. I got the bug then of what it was like to be an elite sport. I loved it. I found my passion. Next best thing for me to playing at that level was to coaching at that level and being on the sideline, or taking a warm up in a busy stadium, or going on training camps, or traveling on the team bus, having your gear bag with your name on it and all that other stuff. Watching your team play on TV, that was for me, that was as close as I was going to get to living out my dream. And Yeah, look, that was kind of where it started for me, working DCU along that. Spent a few years at Bohemians, went on then to Dundalk, spent 5.5 years at Dundalk, and kind of that was kind of where it happened. And a long time alongside that, to be honest, my education was probably the weakest part of my career because obviously I'd obviously been working in these elite environments like in DC. We had incredible athletes in there every day. Dublin senior football team training there every day, and working alongside like Johnny Cooper, James McCarthy. You can keep going through. You're watching the behaviours of all these guys in your day job. You could list a list as long as your arm of all these elite athletes I was working with and watching perform. But for me, I had to go back to college and get studying, get a degree, get a master's degree. And I didn't graduate until I was 30. So I graduated at 30 with a master's degree in exercise science and coaching from UCD. And so for me, it was a long, probably 12-year slog to get that master's, where some people get it in 3 or 4 or 5 years. It took me till I was 30 to get it, but I think ultimately, alongside the career and the experience I've got, I'm glad that I went the unorthodox route to get there, and I think tested my resilience along the way.
Is there any particular mistake you see young coaches make, or they don't have to be young, maybe novice coaches entering the industry, that you've learned from over the years, or just being able to kind of spot check and fix for them, or even a phone call if I was asking you for advice? What mistakes do you see people make?
And I think like ultimately, like it's a sport, like science. It's a science discipline, okay. But we're not working in a lab. Our lab is people. We are dealing with people, and I think a lot of coaches are just unbelievable at looking at data and correlating data and looking at test scores and treating a player as a number, and going like, here's what his or here's what her test scores are. Here's what their jump height is. Here's what their speed test is. Here's what their endurance level is at, whatever, and trying to address that and kind of look at it like it's an equation. It's not. It's a person. Okay, behind each bit of data that you collect, there's a person. So for me, the biggest thing I see going wrong is that people are now, instead of coming into the training pitch every day and looking someone in the eye and saying, "Hi Orla, how are you? How's your sleep? How are you feeling today? What's the mood like? Here's what we're going to do at training today. How's the knee holding up? Have you still got the sniffles? How's your mum or dad? Whatever it might be, engaging the readiness to train." I think people are so eager to put that on a questionnaire and then not actually look Orla in the eye at training until they're in the middle of a drill halfway through. So for me, I just think don't lose the person behind the athlete. Like literally get away from the spreadsheets, get away from your health questionnaire, get away from your all that kind of stuff as much as you can. Obviously, collecting data is hugely important and it aids making really informed decisions. But I do think that you need to remember you are not coaching a machine, you're coaching a person. And it's never as simple as filling in a questionnaire.
Okay, so I'm assuming then the personal kind of touch is something that's really prevalent in your job, whether it's in the gym or out in the pitch.
Absolutely, of course it is, and it's something I just put a huge emphasis on. As we're having this conversation, I've had 3 athletes ring my phone, in the last 10 minutes, and if I'll zoom in and show you. But my point is, they're not ringing me up to ask what should I do in the gym today. They're not ringing up to say, "Hey Graham, my left hamstring is a little bit tighter than my right hamstring," or "Hey, my bench press was a little bit down today, or was a little bit up today." They're ringing me up for a chat, and everyone needs coaches, everyone needs mentors, but I think building rapport with that person and helping them as much as you can to be successful in your sport is your job as a coach. You have to be a friend at times, you have to be a foe at times if they need a kick in the bum, but you certainly look. I think you look, as someone always says. Barry Solon once told me, and on a podcast last year we were sharing, and Barry said, it was a great line of his, and he said, "Look, no one cares how much you know till they know how much you care." And I stole that from Barry, and I've regurgitated it once or twice because I just think it's a really, really important line. So for me, I do think that's super important.
How do you develop that relationship with your player? Like, that's probably something I struggle with from the coaching perspective. I don't not a strength conditioning coach, but trying to develop the initial relationship with the player. How do you start? Where do you begin? And how do you know when you have the, not when you have it, but when you have a bond with somebody?
Look, I think it's probably the biggest challenge in sport. You have to realise there's like you look at a particular dressing room. Let's use Wexford for where it was for the last 3 or 4 years as an example. And you could have 40 players in a panel. You could have 10 or 12 in the back room. You could have four of them are coaching on a game. Like there's we four physios with an opinion of what should be done on the coaching session because he can't be worked too hard. He's carrying a knock. He's carrying a niggle. So there's a potentially 50 people with an opinion of what should be done in training, right? And they're all informed opinions. Some of them played elite sport, some of them coached elite sport, some of them are, so even in the back room, the back rooms can be full of talent. So everyone's got an opinion, everyone's got their own set of values and beliefs. It's about understanding that. And then the most important thing is every player has their own opinion of what they're weakest at, what they need to work on, so I always say to the lads, look, how can I help you? That's it. How can I help you? I'm not going to come in and tell uh, a particular player, here's what you need to work on. Hey, I know this is what's holding you back. I know this is what's weakening you. I'm going to say, look, here's what the data says from our test results. Here's what it says. Here's where you're ranking. That's the data. Now, what do you want to work on? Where do you think you're being held back? So it takes opinion out of it immediately. And I'm just like, hey, look, I'm here to help you, whether it's helping your sleep or nutrition or it's your speed, strength, power, agility, whatever it might be. But for me, it's about like, look, here's the science. Here's what it's saying. Here's the overview of you as a person. What do we need to address quickly? Are we both on the same page? Are we both valuing the same thing? And realistically, I think it's about education and then motivation. I think like educating the guys is a huge important part of what I try and do. Just like share blogs, share like articles with these guys, share little bits of information throughout the year because I think that's hugely important. I think empowering the players. Then I always say, like my journey as an S&C coach, on year 4 or year 5, if I say with a team, the lads should know how to design their own S&C programs. They should know exactly what they're doing at each month of the year. Do you know, they'd be like, look, it's championship season. I probably should be doing my plyometrics, my speed, and my power work now. Like I know that. And for me, the less they rely on me on year 4 and year 5, the better job I've done.
Mm-hmm. You almost become redundant as a coach when
make yourself redundant.
Yeah.
Yeah, as the best S&C coaches make themselves redundant. And I remember like at the time sitting back at Dundalk, a guy called Daryl Horgan. I remember Daryl Horgan designed all his own programs in the year and then just saying to me, here's how I'm going to periodize my training plan this year. Is that okay? And I was like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, Graham, that's good. I think I gave him a thumbs up. I was like, yeah, that's perfect. And then walk away. So, and I wasn't insulted, but I was actually like so happy that you can develop these guys who are just doing their own thing and doing it the right. And look, Sam Mulroy we had on the show is probably another prime example of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Completely. I was you're a pro. I was gonna ask you what how do you find teaching is the wrong word, but like how do you kind of get the buy-in? But I like the way you mentioned kind of using external sources like a blog or an article or even a podcast, like just being clever with the resources you have available to you.
Yeah, like it's not the gospel according to Graham. Like, it's about me saying, like, look, here's what science says. Here's what the science says in your testing. Here's what the science says in the benefits of X, Y, and Z. Now you connect it up. Like if you choose to still go out drinking, even though I'm giving you papers to say this is what alcohol does, this is where your body fat is. This is what alcohol does to your body fat. I just step back. I'm like, you still want to go drinking, that's your own business. But don't tell me a week later you will do anything to win in All Ireland. And then all of a sudden you have the results of your body fat, you have the facts on alcohol and how it affects your performance. And you make your own decisions then. Especially in GAA, it's easy because lads are doing it. So they're amateurs. So they're making decisions based on their passion for the sport and will to be successful. Where it's different in soccer because it's their job. And if players have not got a body fat at a particular range, they could be fined a week's wages, or if they're not performing, they can be out, all this kind of stuff. So
I was going to ask you about alcohol in elite sport. It's something I discussed with Daniel Davy and Foster Horan, and it's kind of this, it probably is a bit of a grey area because you see it in particularly club level across, any age group, adults obviously, but like senior, men or women really, and you just see this coach come in and put this blanket drinking ban for the year, or you have a certain coach doing something else. What's your opinion on alcohol in sport? And while they are amateurs and it's important, with, you know, you've said the proof of the body fat and alcohol, it's also probably important to enjoy life away from the pitch and away from the gym or whatever. So what's your take on how to balance alcohol in elite sport?
I think a blanket ban is ridiculous. I think like I hear about these teams that have the blanket bans on alcohol, like a rule. It's create a rule, not a culture. It doesn't create any kind of a culture. It's created a rule that's only designed to be broken. And these guys could stay off like, for instance, I don't love alcohol. I could take or leave it. Other guys are fiends for takeaways. Other girls, some guys. I'll just refer to them as guys, and we can now we're talking about men or women. Like some guys love takeaways. Some love fizzy drinks. Some love sweets. Some love chocolates. Some love alcohol, and some smoke. How can you pick one of those six things and say no one's allowed to do this? Like, how can you put an importance on it like that? So you're telling me I could have a guy, I'd be training somebody who's 2 stone overweight, okay, who's last in the fitness test results, okay, eats, but all of a sudden is told, stop drinking alcohol. What if that person doesn't drink alcohol or drinks once a month? Like, what? Like, that person's problem isn't the alcohol. Like, I think you have to just be like, hey, here's what our body fat test scores are. Here's the things that make your body fat go up. So, like, you draw the conclusions here, guys. These foods make your body fat go down, and this training will make your body fat go down. However, these foods will make your body fat go up, and none will make your body fat go up as high as alcohol. It's top of the list of offenders. So for me, I say to guys like, hey, people, tune in. We can, if you eat super healthy all week long and you're not eating any really processed foods and you're not eating all these fizzy drinks and all this garbage food on the go, you're eating really, really whole food and you're eating really, really healthy, and you decide on a Saturday night to have 2 glasses of wine while you're having a movie night and you're going to bed at 11 o'clock before you get your 9 hours sleep. What's wrong with that? Like, what is wrong with that? I'd actually be more worried about the guy that did go out, went to a nightclub, came home at 3:45 in the morning, got into bed, and got up and went training on Sunday morning, didn't drink a drop, but managed to only get 4 hours sleep. So, like, how can you prioritize? Like, I find it bizarre that people can pinpoint one single thing and be like, hey, this is one thing you're not allowed to do. So for me, I just look, hey, here's results. Your body fat is high, and so be it. Like, some people switch off with alcohol, some people switch off with a gym session, some people switch off by going for a walking their dog. It's just bizarre that it gets such importance. It needs to be unique to that, or specific to that person, in my eyes.
I think I kind of find it with the GAA, maybe because it's an amateur setup. Maybe I'm wrong. You can probably attest to it more being involved in soccer. But it's like you're involved with a GAA team and you hear of this team that won the county championship, and because they had a drinking ban, and it's like, geez, that team down the road, that's what they won, so we have to do it. And then it spreads like wildfire, and then everyone's saying, well, they did it and they were successful. So if you were to compare kind of maybe the League of Ireland setup to a county setup, or even let's say senior club, how close are we to being a professional setup in the GAA sense when everyone says we're professionals but it's an amateur organisation?
Look, I suppose the biggest thing I say is there's a cultural difference in soccer and GAA. Like, there's a cultural difference, from kids growing up. From kids growing up, and there's a million different cultural differences. But at senior level, like, League of Ireland is played for 46, 48 weeks of the year. Those guys are training and playing matches every Friday, every second Monday, probably on average. So you don't really have many opportunities to drink. And so to go out and have nights out, like, are few and far between. Okay. And the guys know, if they go out, and guys and girls, they go out and they play matches and then they don't get picked, all of a sudden it's affecting their pocket. Okay. So that's a huge thing. Then you're on to the other thing of I would say with GAA, it's like, right, we're going to not drink for the whole league. So we're not going to drink for the league. So we've got 8 weeks where no drinking. And then we're going to tear it up and have like a year's supply of alcohol in 3 days. And then we're going to break down, because I guarantee you during the week after that big 3-day bender. There's going to be hamstring injuries to beat the band. There's going to be groin injuries to beat the band. There'll be flus, chest infections, everything going around the camp. And you end up having 2 of the shittest weeks training ever, all because you decided to have a few drinks. And because they were starved of it, the Saturday night drinks turns into the Sunday all day drinks, and the Sunday night and the Monday. And I'm like, turn up to train on Tuesday night and like, what is this? So I think that's a poor relationship with alcohol. I think you're putting a huge importance on alcohol and a relationship between it being a reward system, and alcohol is not a reward system in my opinion. It's just not like so. Putting it down as a reward, I think, is where the GAA culture differentiates itself potentially from the soccer culture. I just think, and it's just something I do not like. And yeah, I think there's more of a binge culture because it's forbidden for so many weeks or months, and then all of a sudden it's off you go for a week, lads, and then head down again. And I just don't. I think a glass of wine every Saturday night with a steak dinner is there's no harm in it, you know. And I just think that's kind of the difference I see between those 2 sports that I've worked in over the last decade or so.
Another question that's come up a lot is coaching men versus women. Do you have any difference in your approach, the way you coach? Is there any differences you find between the 2 genders at all?
Um, No, like I think there's more of a difference between coaching different sports. I think there's more of a difference between soccer and Gaelic. It's because soccer and GAA and hurling, like there's more of a difference there than I would find in coaching women or men in GAA or in basketball, whatever it may be. Yeah, I don't find they're all super receptible. You couldn't say, oh, women are more receptive than men and vice versa. It all just comes down to the culture in that specific group. I think it will be fair to say that S&C elite coaching of women is probably a little bit newer. So the girls are potentially more appreciative of having that, of having an S&C coach potentially, because it's probably been a vital part of men's sport for a little bit longer. So I think maybe they're potentially more appreciative of having somebody give them that attention, having that service available to them. But I don't see a difference. I think there's an awful lot of brilliant strength conditioning coaches working across both codes, and I think it's all comes down to the individual group, comes down to the culture in the individual group.
When you're kind of in the off season, say, and people are ringing the phone and saying, Graham, look, I want you to come here or there, or where we're giving you different offers, what do you look for in a team when you're joining or when you're looking to join a particular setup? Do you have kind of like a certain criteria they have to meet? Is it maybe just based on kind of your gut? How do you decide what team or place you're going to go work?
Yeah, it's a great question because it is about looking at the culture in the group. It's about looking at the people they're going to work with. So you're only as good as I suppose, the respect and the input that is given to you by the manager. You know, it all boils down to the manager. And I wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for a manager reaching out to me to offer me a job. So if a manager offers you a job, you need to first of all find out what's the manager's idea of an SSE coach, or of a like what's his perfect, you know? So there's no point in me being what I want to be when the manager wants an S&C coach to be something else. So I've been all the managers I've worked with. So what Stephen Kenny wanted from me as an S&C coach is different, completely different to what Davy Fitzgerald wanted from me as an S&C coach. My job title was the exact same. However, one of them wants X and the other one wants Y. Obviously, you're going to be on the pitch for training sessions. Obviously, you're going to be managing GPS. Obviously, you're going to be taking the warm ups. Obviously, you're going to be looking after the gym sessions. But outside, in what capacity, how much, how long is training, how short is training, when are we doing a training camp, when are we not doing a training camp? Like consulting me on substitutes or not consulting me on substitutes. So for me, it's about like, what do you want from me is the first question I ask the manager. What is the perfect S&C coach for you? And that's the first question you ask. And then you need to look at the group. You need to look at the players. Are they, like, ideally wants a team who are like young and ambitious and willing to buy into everything full metal jacket. So that would be a huge thing. You know, people are going to literally buy into your methods and and milk you for every kind of bit of sports science knowledge that you might have. You know, I'd rather be my phone rang off the hook by a team who've really bought into it than be chasing up guys kind of asking for whether it was a food diary, or did you do that gym workout, or did you do that stretching session or whatever. So for me, it's about the buy-in in the group and having a really good culture and strong culture in the group where they value, if their values align with my values, then it's going to work out, you know.
Of all the teams and the athletes you've coached, is there any particular trend or pattern or any particular characteristics that you see that separates the elite athletes and the elite, all-stars, player, man of the match, all that kind of thing, those accolades from the rest of the pack, from the rest of their competition, from the rest of their peers? Is there anything that you've noticed? Maybe there isn't a trend, maybe it's all, everyone has had their own individual traits over the years.
Yeah, it'd be fair to say they all kind of have individual traits. All I'd say is not only is it super important, and my job is to build up physical robustness. So kind of build up that physical resilience where we're able to play a game into extra time. We're able to play 2 games in a week. We're able to do really tough training sessions and not break down with illness or injury, to be able to withstand the physical demands of the sport. That's my job. So my job is to build up that physical resilience and robustness and make sure they're ready to perform. But also each one of the top athletes that you might single out that I've been lucky enough to work with, they have this unbelievable kind of mental kind of resilience, and they've all had setbacks and they've all bounced back. And that's really what I find. I listened to a podcast only today, and it was a high performance podcast. We won't drop their name podcast on it. And
You've
we were
listened to this
talking.
podcast before the other one.
Yeah. This is way better. And we were talking to a former CrossFit world champion, and he was saying that his career he was destined to become an Olympic powerlifter, and that was his goal, Olympic powerlifter. And he broke a bone in his back. His career was over. Didn't know what that happened for. Why did this happen? My career is shattered. All I wanted to be was an Olympian. And the resilience for him was he came back and he became 5-time CrossFit champion of the world. And you're just thinking to yourself, you know what? It wasn't just his physical ability to do what he could do. It was his resilience to. So I'm sure everyone's had injuries, they've had setbacks, they've not been selected for squads, they've not been picked for teams, they've had that. But these guys keep coming back, they keep chasing it, and it's never anyone else's problem. I find this is a huge thing between GAA and soccer, if I can say this. Quite opinionated, and people can take it with a pinch of salt. And I'm speaking from my own experience. When you play GAA, you have a team, and very, very rarely would you transfer from that team. So if you're not being picked or you're not performing, the problem is either you or your coach. Okay. And you need to give up a bit of yourself. You need to lose a bit of your ego and say to coach, like, how can I get better? And your coach is only one reason for being, and that's your coach wants to win. And he wants to play the best team, not players who he likes or players who he doesn't like. He or she, that coach wants to play the best team. And if it's not working out for you, you're not getting selected, you can't really just leave and go down the road and join the next GAA club in 10 minutes. Okay. And so you get into this process. So that's what I love about GAA. It's like the process is like, you can't just jump to another club. In soccer, if it's not going for me, and I did it as a kid, this manager isn't playing me because I got sick for 2 weeks, or I was on my holidays for a week and now he's not playing me, so I'm a sub. And instead, after 3 games of not getting my game or being a sub, I just leave and I go to another club. And then I can go there and I can be like all good with my mates. And then all of a sudden, this manager didn't like me. And I leave and go to another club. So anytime I hit a bump in the road, or hear any kind of adversity, it's someone else's fault. I'm like, that was the manager's fault. The manager, he was a dickhead. He didn't like me. It's not me. And I spent 3 or 4 years of my adolescent soccer career doing that. And I see it happen all the time now. Whereas I love in GAA, you got to go and fix it. You have the players you have the coach you have. Let's work harder on the training pitch. Let's develop physically. Let's develop our skills. Let's develop mentally. Let's improve. So I think that's where it lends a lot to kind of the environment and the culture. I just think is more can help build more robust athletes.
Mm-hmm. When you break it down, when we discuss the mental versus physical, I'm just going through the same questions nearly every episode, but I think it brings up really interesting answers. But when you kind of put them on a column each side and ask for a percentage of how much is it sport mental versus physical, is there a particular breakdown you can see, like people say, oh, it's 80% mental, 20% physical, or people are completely opposite and say it's 50-50. What would your answer be on that?
It's a great question. And look, everyone's got an opinion on this. Some will say 90-10 one way, some will say 20-80 the other way. I think the more talented you are physically, okay, I think the more room you have to be mentally weak. You know, like we look at Gary Neville or Phil Neville played for Man United, who both, through their own self-admission, would have said, like, they've won all these 13 Premier League titles and Champions Leagues and everything else. Both would have said weren't very talented. They had to be super strong mentally and very, very determined to do every side of the game well. So I think if you're naturally superly physically gifted and really, really good, like Leo Messi, you can get away with being a little bit more mentally not as strong as the next guy. But I can guarantee you all, the guy. So that's kind of what I do in my head. I meet players and I talk to players and athletes all the time. And I go like, geez, they're really good. So they can actually get away with being a little bit less mentally strong than the other person. And you've got these other people who sometimes the water carriers on the team, for want of a better expression, the water carriers on the team. Okay. I know loads of them. I was
That's
one
okay,
myself when
I'm
I was
one
a
as
kid,
well.
but yeah. So sometimes the water carriers are actually the glue. They're the most mentally strong people in the group. They're the people that create the buy-in. Every team needs to have people who are incredibly mentally strong. And I think the water carriers and what they bring psychologically and mentally to the group is absolutely invaluable. So I do think that every team needs a mix of both. People who are slightly better mentally than others and people who are slightly better physically than others.
Okay, very interesting. We spoke yesterday on the phone and you mentioned Dundalk and going and starting off with Stephen Kenny and building the culture even within the group. Describe that journey starting off and up to kind of finishing with them. What was that journey like? How did you start? When did you realise you had it? Give us a bit of insight into that setup.
Yeah, it was Steve. I think it was Christmas Eve, 2012, and Stephen rang and yeah, we had a chat and he said, look, do you fancy coming on board? He said, at the moment, we've got 2 players or 3 players or whatever signed. We are going to be up against it pre-season. We'll probably start in 2 weeks' time. Have no coach and staff and no players, but do you fancy a challenge? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So the next 2 weeks, I think Stephen managed to pull together 20 players and pull together a back room, and we went to work. I remember we started our pre-season. I think it was, remember actually quite vividly, it was like the 17th of January, and you're going up and you're meeting complete strangers. I'd never met any of the back room. I'd never met any of the, apart from maybe 1 or 2 of the players who had coached at Bohemians. The rest of them were all strangers, and Stephen and I had never worked together before. So it was a lot of like smelling each other out. Who are you? What are you doing? What's your job? I remember like you're trying to remember lads' names off the tattoos that they have on their arms, or so yeah, it was funny. I'm getting body fat for lads and tell a great story. So I was getting body fat for lads, and I was like saying to them, "Hi, how are you? I'm Graham. Get your top off, and I'll measure body fat for you." Hi, Graham. How are you? And like the second one come up was Andy Boyle. Now he's gone on, played for Ireland, had a great career. He still had to look. Andy Boyle take his top off, and he has Andy tattooed across his chest. And I said to him, "What's your name?" He says, "Oh, Andy." I said, "I can see that." And then the next fella comes up, and in the exact same place, he has Richie tattooed across his chest. And I said, "What's your name?" He says, "Oh, Richie Tell." I said, "Oh, hey, nice to meet you, Richie." I said, "Do all you have your names tattooed in the exact same place on your chest?" I think they were the only 2, but they tended to have their names tattooed somewhere on their body. And but yeah, that was kind of where it started. And Richie won't mind me telling that story. We're going to gym tomorrow together, so we're still really good friends. And I was a groomsman for his wedding in the summer, and we great crack. So that was the start of a good friendship. But I suppose that was kind of what it was like starting off. You're meeting these strangers. You don't know if it's going to be in your life for 10 minutes or 10 years or the rest of your life. And you start off, we had nothing. We trained on our home pitch in Oriel Park, the Astro pitch. People warn me about that for injuries. They're like, don't train them; they'll get injured. To beat the band. I was like, yeah, well, we kind of put that myth to bed anyway. I think over the next 4, 5, 6 years, we had a lot of success. Stephen was brilliant for me and kind of empowered me, and that was what I was saying there. Like, just the manager has to empower you if you want to be successful on that kind of front. And I think it was brilliant from the lads. The buy-in was 100% in terms of the physical side of things. I think because the players knew they weren't the best, on paper, they weren't the best team in the league. I think paranoia can be a fantastic thing in sports sometimes. I think we kind of were like bookies' favourites to be relegated, and lads are paranoid. We kind of knew like we need to be super fit to compete with the so-called better players in the league. I'm just a really young, ambitious group, and we came second in the league that year. Got to the cup semi-final. Following year, we went and won it, won the league. Following year, we won the double. Then we went and won the double again. We ended up in the Europa League group stages. I think the smallest team ever to get into the Europa League group stages, the smallest team or the smallest coefficient they call it, ever to win points in the Europa League group stages or to qualify for the Champions League playoff round. I think we were probably a poor refereeing decision and a width of a crossbar away from being in the Champions League group stage. I don't know if people realise how close we got to that, but that was how close we were. So yeah, it was a fantastic journey, real fairy tale stuff. To do that journey with, but I could say some of my best friends along the way, and yeah, look, Steve was great along the time and along that way and that journey, and now look at him, he's doing a great job in Ireland as well. So yeah, that was pretty much it.
Give us a bit of an insight into working with Stephen Kenny. You mentioned empowerment. How did he empower you as a S&C coach, and how did he? I'm assuming he empowered the players. Maybe I'm wrong, but how did he kind of manage that group as well?
I think he's a master in recruitment. I think recruitment is hugely important. Not just recruiting a player because of their physical attributes, because they've got a wand of a right foot or a wand of a left foot, or they're brilliant in the air. I think just really getting to know the person behind the athlete is a huge strength of Stephen's. So if you're lucky enough to ever work with Stephen Kenny, you'll know that he only recruits kind of good people, and I think that was a huge bit for him. He managed to recruit some brilliant players, and players who loved the process of training. Knew that they weren't going to get instant results, and there was a lot of guys there that I think it was a remarkable stat that we like the amount of degrees and master degrees that we had in our Dundalk dressing room was like unheard of. There was like 13 of the 20 had been to university and studied a degree and a master's. And Stephen was recruiting these people, and I'm not saying that's anyway helping us on the pitch, but what I'm saying is like these are guys who were working their bum off the pitch and on the pitch, and understood that the reward might not be instant. They knew that it could be 4 years getting a degree or 6 years getting your master's degree, and there were guys who just understood the process. And Stephen was able to identify guys who said, look, the rewards won't be instant. You'll have to grind it every day, like studying every day. You'll have to go to the gym every day, eat well every day, sleep well every day. And eventually in 2, 3, 4 years time, you'll get the rewards just like you might in college. And I think that's what happened for us. It felt to me like that. Every year, like clockwork, you set your watch to it. You go back and look at players in year 3 at Dundalk. They really just peaked, physically and mentally, and they just performed. And they more often than not, then they weren't around for year 4. They tended to be gone on a big transfer across the water. So Stephen's just brilliant at, I suppose, putting an emphasis on sports science and putting a trust in me to take drills, take sessions, plan schedules, whatever it might be. He just trusted me, and I think he was the boss. His recruitment is second to none. His trust in his team second to none, and I just think it was a remarkable journey, and he's a fantastic man there.
Wow, that's very interesting in regards to the degrees. Were you involved in Wexford when the boxing coach Billy Walsh was there?
Yes, so Billy was with us last season. Yeah, hero of mine. Yeah, hero of mine.
What did you learn from him out of interest?
Billy was brilliant. Came on board. Obviously, Dara Egan kind of asked Billy to come on board. Like Billy, we always brilliant background there. Noel Corcoran, like he's kind of head coach, and between himself and Willie Cleary and Gordon Darcy was in there as well with us last year in the background. So there was a lot of really good top coaches like kind of in the background, and Billy was a brilliant kind of mentor, I suppose, for coaches as well. So gave a couple of really insightful workshops about what is high performance. Gave a few brilliant workshops, did a few brilliant sessions with us on the pads as well, and for a bit of fun. Bit of session on the pad. Yeah, some of them are fun. I think one of them ended up, I think somebody, maybe it was Matt Hanlon, might have put me on my arse on one of them, but the lads didn't let that one go. But I think we did a few good boxing sessions, and Billy was brilliant. And look, I think he's the top. We talked about Stephen a minute ago, obviously in the role he has, but in terms of world class coaches coming out of this country, Billy's right up there, isn't he? Like, we don't produce millions of top class, world class coaches But the fact that he's been recruited by Team USA to be their head coach just speaks volumes about the man.
Yeah.
He's so humble, he's so passionate. His enthusiasm is just infectious, and there's just no ego. He's just still a bit. He was able to just give us insights and ask us easy questions, and kind of wasn't full of opinion, which was really, really nice of him, kind of to come in and say, "Look, what do you think, Graham? What do you think, Graham? And why do you think that? And maybe that is the right way." And yeah, it was a pleasure to deal with him, and he still got that bit of Wexford street in him as well, where he likes a giggle and a laugh and a joke, and no prouder Wexford man would you find on any corner of the earth,
Very good. I'm going to have to get him on. He's on the list of potential guests. I don't know. I might be waiting a
Ah,
while for that one. But I want to ask you, you mentioned Wexford there. You mentioned all the teams you're involved with, even the commuting down. Like, how do you balance? And even the guys messaging you and ringing you all the time, and it is part of your role, but your own well-being and your own, being refreshed and energized, and it's a long season. How do you stay, ready and full of energy and not get too drained and bogged down with everything that you do on the pitch, in the gym, or outside of that, when guys need support in other ways as well?
yeah, I suppose it's another great question. No one really asked that question. It's always about the athletes, right? It's
Yeah.
always about the athletes. No one actually says, "How are you?" No one's asked me about 10 years. How am I? I nearly cried there when you asked me. But no one tends to ask, "How are you?" Okay. I would say it's really important. You only have so much juice in the juicer, okay? You only have so much, there's only so much in the battery. And it's about being really clever with your time. I've got a day job, as I said, in Sport Ireland campus, which can take up, 5, 6 days a week, 40 odd hours a week. And you're managing staff day to day and managing members in the gym and people using campus. So it is about kind of being able to switch on and off at different times, be able to prioritize this month my priority is X, next month my priority is Y, and being able to literally just prioritize busy times for particular things. Otherwise, you get burnt out, you get sick. And look, that's probably a huge reason why I'm back in Dublin this year with the Dublin 20s. It's just about my own personal quality of life. I'm a better coach when I'm not spending 2 or 3 hours in the car up and down to training and traffic, having been in work for 9 hours that day. So for me, that's probably after 10 years of traveling. I suppose I spent 5.5 years in Dundalk, a year and a half with the Louth senior footballers, and then 3 with Wexford. And I think this year was kind of a little bit of a look, Graham, you need to be the best coach you can be. You need to obviously cut down the commute, cut down the time in your car, and really just focus on kind of how to keep as much juice in the battery as possible, to be the best coach you can be. Because look, you need to care. That's the number one criteria: is teams and teammates and athletes you train. They need to know that you really care. And as soon as you start to appear tired or you start to do too much, they'll see through that. They'll see a watered down version of you. They see you might not have both feet in the camp, and that, I think, is just a recipe for disaster. If they see that you're 90% committed, but you're half kind of looking out the door. So for me, I try and avoid that at all costs. And I think, as I said, it's probably a huge. It may be Dublin under 20s this year allows me to put my best foot forward every single session.
Completely. You had a great quote a couple of years ago. I know you got a bit of slack for it, but there have been plenty of full-time footballers in Ireland, but no professional footballers. So, Graham, what makes a pro athlete from kind of
Yeah.
that quote of what you meant with that?
Oh, what I meant with that was, yeah, and I remember at the time I got absolutely lashed out on Twitter. Um, I was like saying, "Hey, I wasn't doing it to insult people that come before us. I was doing it as because I was saying, like, people were saying, oh, Dundalk are this amateur team who have made it to the Europa League group stages and beaten all these teams along the way." And I was saying, we're not amateur, we're professional. And so what I meant by that was, just because we train in the evening time at 6 o'clock doesn't mean that we're amateur. Like, professional is a way of life. Okay. Just because you play for, like, there could be somebody playing for Leinster and be in there every single morning from 9 till 2 playing for Leinster, or, there's 3 or 4 professional clubs in League of Ireland now. Like, you can be a professional League of Ireland player now. I see plenty of them. And, like, yeah, your job is you're a professional footballer because you train in the morning time from 9 to 1 or 9 to 2. But some of these lads have got body fat too high, don't go to the gym, having croissants every day, going out on the beer the weekend. Like, does that make them professional footballers? Is it the fact that some of our guys at Dundalk at the time, or some of the guys in Wexford, or some of the guys in Dublin, or some of the guys in bloody Leitrim hurling team? Do you know what? Because they play for Leitrim hurling team, they train together twice a week, that all of a sudden they're not professional. It's professional is a way of life. It's not what time of day you train at. It's the decisions you make every single day. Do I go to bed now, or do I stay up an extra hour and play the Xbox? Do I have a few drinks tonight, or do I get into bed because I've got a good gym session in the morning? Do I eat a croissant on the way to training, or do I not? So there's a big difference in my eyes between professional athletes and full-time athletes. And I think that's where the lines are blurred a lot.
Okay. Interesting. I know we're going to get to the sideline 7 next, but I wanted to ask you about Lindsay Peat, because you are the person that introduced Lindsay to rugby.
Lindsay, yeah, the great Lindsay Peat, a legend of how many sports at this stage? Yeah, so Lindsay, I worked alongside my role in the dock. I would have worked as the strength and conditioning coach for DCU Ladies Super League basketball team, and Lindsay was our captain and our star. And I remember she had a bad ankle injury, and we were doing a lot of rehab for a few weeks. Lindsay and I were in the gym, and one day we did a pad session, and my pads, like, so she was punching me because we were doing some upper body conditioning. She wasn't allowed on the court, and I was black and blue my wrists for like a good week. And I was like, Lindsay, we need to give it a good week before we can do a pad session again. She absolutely beat me up, and I was just like, I couldn't get over her speed and power. And I was working. We worked together for years, and we're good friends. And it blew my mind how good she was across all codes, across all sports. And not only that, and that's why I mentioned so strongly her mental resilience, like her actual determination, like is just incredible. She's just so headstrong. She's just nothing was ever an obstacle for her. She saw an obstacle as an opportunity, and I just she's contagious to be around. And I ended up having a chat with a family member who was involved in a rugby club over on south side of Dublin. I'm saying, Graham, we're trying to recruit some players. We reckon if we get some players in, they could have a chance of representing like the national team, or on a big kind of push. And I said, I have the best athlete in the country for you, and her name is Lindsay Peat. And put her in touch with Lindsay, and boom, there you go. I think within 18 months, Lindsay was playing for Ireland, which is incredible. But yeah, that's Lindsay's story, and what an athlete. Longevity, different sports. It doesn't matter what it is. Lindsay's excelled.
Can you describe what it's like working with Lindsay? Is she someone that just pushes you to the max as well as herself? Describe what that's like being in the gym with her? Is she competitive? What is it that gives her that edge, that mental robustness, as well as all of the physical capabilities she had as well?
Yeah, she knows her body, okay, but she's always pushing the limits of her own body. She's always pushing to see what she can handle. Some people, the easy way is to go, that's enough for me today. That's enough for me today. Often I'm training athletes, I go, do you want to go again, or have you had enough, or how are you feeling? Is that enough for you for today? And a lot of them go, yeah, that's me for today. I've done enough now. I'm happy with that. She was like, no, I want to do this. No, I want to do that. I want to do more. There was never enough for Lindsay. It was never enough. Like in the bag, she was like, yeah, give me more. I want more of this, more of that, more of the other, and just pushing herself outside her comfort zone was just something she loved to do. She's like Dora the Explorer, but in a fitness fanatic kind of sporting version, where she was like, yeah, I'll give that a go. Like a Northside Dub who played soccer and GAA and basketball, all of a sudden moving to the deep south side, and getting into going and playing rugby in a sport she'd never played, with people that she didn't rub shoulders with every day. That's just Lindsay to a T. She's just so brave, and yeah, as I said, every kind of obstacle for her was an opportunity.
We're going to move on to Sideline 7, brought to you by RTP Physiotherapy, founded by chartered physiotherapists Tony Fox and Thomas Divity. The guys are based in St Jude's GAA Club in Temple Oak in Dublin. RTP specialise in physiotherapy, return to play, physical health and performance. You can visit rtp.physio for more. Question 1, Graham. Tell me, are you a quotes fan, and what is your favourite quote if you are?
I am a quotes fan. I used to always and live off that one. Hard work pays off is written on the wall in my gym. It's written. I used to put it on the end of every tweet I used to send back in 2012, back in the day. Um, But that's probably the one. Look, hard work pays off. But the biggest issue I have with that is people don't understand what hard work is. Some people's opinion of hard work is like, oh, this is me working hard. This is what it takes to win in All Ireland. And I'm like, you have no idea what it takes to work in All Ireland. That's 6 out of 10 hard. But they think that's hard. So my problem with hard work pays off is how do you measure what's hard and what's easy and what's not? Okay, so that's my problem with that quote. Hard work. So like, in my opinion, some people think getting up and going to work and coming home is hard work. Other people think that's just 10% and I need to go to the gym twice today and I need to drop 3 kids of this and 4 kids of that and I need to do all this stuff. So that's my issue with that. The other one, the one that's kind of stuck with me over the last year or two is don't be upset by the results you don't get or you didn't get for the work that you didn't do. Okay, so like people like, oh yeah, the ref, oh yeah, yeah, if that sideline had to gone over, if we had to got that decision, we deserve better. 99.999% of the time, you didn't deserve better. You didn't do the work. Whether it was you or your teammate or your video analyst guy or your nutritionist, somebody didn't work hard enough to win that match. Somebody somewhere down the line. So don't be upset over it. So I would say don't be upset by the results that you didn't get with the work you didn't do.
Very good. Question 2. What's the best sporting event you've been to? And you can split it into 2 parts. Maybe one where you're involved with and one as a fan.
I'd say being involved is probably a good one. There's a number of them. Obviously, first time coaching in Croke Park, being the sideline, being the dressing room. My first time doing that was actually with the Louth senior footballers.
Very good.
In Croke Park. That was brilliant. And obviously then with Wexford, being in Croke Park, and slightly bigger crowds than we had at Louth football, but Croke Park's an incredible place to be. But probably Dundalk actually in being involved, the memories you made in Europe were incredible. Remember we beat Bate Borisov 3-0 in Tallaght Stadium. And that guaranteed us a spot in either the group stage of the Europa League or the Champions League. That was incredible night. We won 3-0. So I would say that was probably the best night that I've had on being involved in sport. And then probably watching sport. I'm a bit of an American sports guy. I kind of look, obviously at home, being in Croke Park to watch Dublin win 5 in a row, the senior football 5 in a row is probably the best that I've had, the best I've experienced. Because obviously I knew so many of the players and the management, and watching them be successful, you kind of felt a bit of a part of it, like just because I'd seen how hard they worked over the previous decade or so. So to see some of your friends realise their dreams and winning 5 in a row, as well as being a Dublin fan, was a huge, like that was probably the best. And then a little bit for the occasion, American football, go and watch Tom Brady play for the Patriots in his prime.
Wow.
And as a Super Bowl champion, it's probably the occasion that they have in America. As a fan, switching off and getting away from it, I think they do things really well over there. And watching Tom Brady in full flow is probably a highlight as well.
Very good. Question 3. What's been the biggest setback or challenge so far in your career, and how did you react to it?
Biggest setback or challenge was probably leaving Dundalk. I suppose I spent 5.5 years there, every day giving it my heart and soul. And one day went in, had a disagreement, and was gone and lost my job. And that was probably the biggest setback I had. And realised that I was 30, I lost my job, going in one morning and out 10 minutes later, after a disagreement. And you're like, what do I do now? It was my full-time job. It was my career. It had been given everything. I'd given it everything 5.5 years, and that was a big setback for me. And so yeah, look, I think I've bounced back from it. Kind of a sideways move into GAA. Since I left Dundalk, it's almost 5 years later, 4.5 years later, and I think I just had to be resilient. I had to say, hey, look, I thought my career was going a particular way, and I thought that was the way it was going to go, and just adapting. Whether you're talking about Matt Fraser, I mentioned him as CrossFit champion earlier, breaking his back, thinking he was going to become an Olympian as a powerlifter, and then all of a sudden becoming CrossFit world champion. I think for me, at maybe 14, thinking I was going to become a professional footballer, and then realizing, no. I think for me, thinking I was going to go on and me and Stephen Kenny would be working together for the next 50 years and have all this and be at Man United. I think all of a sudden realizing that, I now need to get a job. I just, so I think for me, I had to bounce back and get into the world of GAA, and get into the work at Sport Ireland and all that gives me. I think it's I just had to be resilient then in my career and kind of learn to adapt to new challenges and new environments, and And that's what I suppose that's the biggest one.
Okay, very good. Kind of on the flip side then, what's been your biggest achievement on or off the pitch?
Mine has probably been the guy that got less than 300 points in his leaving cert, going on to study 2 masters and graduating from UCD in 2016 with a master's in exercise science was probably my biggest achievement, I would say, because it was probably the hardest thing. I find it easy to stand on the sideline and coach. I find it easy to get into a gym and coach a session. Um, yeah, it's energy. It takes energy. It takes enthusiasm. It takes planning. But I think the biggest and most difficult thing for me was sitting in a classroom and writing a thesis and everything else that goes through all the years of education and kind of work I did. So yeah, I'd say that's it.
Very good. Looking back, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Don't. I would say it's a great question. 18-year-old self. I would say lose any kind of ego you have. It's not about you. Put your ego to bed. I think ego is the biggest thing that gets in people's way of success. And it gets in the way of a team success all the time, whether it's a player's ego or whether it's a manager's ego or a coach's ego. I'd say put your ego to one side and be totally transparent to everyone 24/7. There's no place in the world for any kind of you got to say what you're thinking all the time. If anyone knows me now, they'll say, "Geez, Graham is the one guy who tells you exactly what he's thinking 24/7." And I think I look at that as a huge. I'd say that's a huge kind of attribute to have. Saying it as it is, and kind of focus on that. So I'd say, yeah, look, put your ego to bed, Graham. Don't be so sensitive. The world is a big, scary place out there. Don't rely on anyone else to have your back. They will not have your back. Everyone in sport is on their own journey, and don't put trust in people. Just do the best you can do every day and try and be as successful as you can be. And unfortunately for us, or fortunately for us as coaches, we need the players for our success, so we need to give them every bit of us.
Very good. Who would be your dream dinner guest and why? And you can open up the table to a few people if you want.
Well, my idol, I suppose, is Sir Alex Ferguson, just because of what he did. Again, he had a tough start to his career at Glasgow Rangers as a player and getting dumped out the door, and then going on in his management career and had to go the long road to becoming a Man United manager. He had a really tough 3-4 years at Man United when he started his career, and then went on to be the most successful manager in the history of the club. And I'm a Man United fan me, so I'd say he's someone I'd love to sit down and just talk about that journey and talk about how he managed all those players through that incredible spell of 26 years, whatever it was, at the helm.
Final question before I let you go. You've been so generous with your time. If your life was a book, Graham, what chapter would this be called?
Great question.
It's not my question, Graham. I've robbed this from another podcast. I'm just going to put that out there.
I hope this question, it's like it's coming into 2023 now. I hope this question is like maybe called Coming Home, or maybe something like that. I've spent 10 years on the road, coaching teams 3, 4, 5 times a week, a lot of traveling, a lot of commitment, and loved every second of it. But hopefully this year, between club commitments and county commitments, it could be just a year of kind of coming home and back to Dublin and applying my trade here.
Okay, very good. If there's anyone listening that wants to reach out to you, where is the best place to get in touch?
I have got Twitter and Instagram. I've got just Fitness Coach G. That's me. Simple. I hope I'm the only one, and there's not loads of fitness coaches with a G in their name. It's probably outdated username that's going around about 6 years that I probably need to change. So please don't judge. But yeah, if anyone wants to reach out, I'd love to help, or give an opinion on something or another. Feel free.
Brilliant, Graham. Thanks a million again, and best of luck with everything moving forward.
Orla, thanks so much.
A big thank you to Graham for joining me on the podcast. I hope you got something from the episode, and I'll be sure to leave all of his social media links in the description box below if you'd like to keep up with his work. If you're enjoying the podcast, please do leave a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as it does help the show grow. Be sure to follow our social media at The Sideline Live and send in your suggestions. Thanks for listening.